This week on the Clip Service podcast, it's just me, solo episode with yours truly. Rolla and Connor are busy with their jam-packed schedule, and so here I am, guys. This one's going to be a little quick and a little bit of a roller coaster, much like the way that the Clippers have been playing as of late. A lot to unpack, so I'm going to try and do that as effectively and quickly as possible because we all got stuff that we got to do. We all got things going on in our lives. I don't want to keep you bogged down for too long, but there are things that need to be said, and I'm going to try my best to say all of them. The Clippers hope to go on. Actually, preface this with I'm recording this on Monday, the 1st. Happy April Fool's Day, and hope everybody enjoyed their Easter for those that celebrate. But yeah, the Clippers ended up taking a win yesterday against the Charlotte Hornets. They hope to go 4-0 on this road trip that they've just done or are about to finish, I should say. They've been playing better lately, and there's quite a few things to be happy about. But I will not let recency bias get in the way of me criticizing the other side of things, which has been dog shit for lack of a better word at times. And the Clippers got to try and figure out a way to be consistent. Um, I don't want to get too negative. I feel like last time I did an episode by myself, it was pretty negative. So I'm going to try and sprinkle some positive in today because there definitely has been some of that as well. So all of that and more coming up. So without further ado, let's make it happen. What's going on, everybody? Thank you guys so much for tuning into the Clip Service podcast. You can listen to us on Spotify, Amazon Music, Apple Podcasts. You can listen to us on Deezer, of course, on YouTube as well. And then get at us on Twitter and Instagram at Clip Service Pod. Let us know what you think of the pod. Feel free to say hi. Tell us how your lives are going. We would love to know. Yeah. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. A lot to unpack here, so let's just jump right into it. The Clippers, man, where do I even begin? The Clippers have been an enigma, I guess, for lack of a better word, since about February, since the end of January, beginning of February. And what I mean by that is the Clippers do this thing where they'll string together some really impressive, dominant, championship contender-esque stretches of play, and then they will look like a completely different team. One that is ranked in the bottom 5 in almost every statistical category that there is. And it's perplexing because, I'm not of the belief that it's a matter of a roster issue. I think that the pieces are in place. I think that if there was an issue with the roster, that I think that would have kind of gotten in the way of the dominant stretch that the Clippers had in December and January. And things were the team was gelling, and all the pieces looked like they fit during that time. And so that's why it's kind of it kind of leaves Clipper fans scratching their heads, and Ty Lue on the sideline scratching his head as well, because there's no real rhyme or reason for why the Clippers decide to come out flat the way that they do at times. And, recently has been no exception. The Clippers we're going to cover the last 5 games, I think, but the first 2 of which were pretty devastating losses to both the 76ers without Embiid, although he is coming back apparently relatively soon, which is great to hear for them particularly. Um, yeah, the 76ers didn't have Embiid in this one, and the Clippers fall 121 to 107. Um, this one was this one was tough. The energy kind of wasn't there from the jump, and like we say so many times with this Clipper team, they didn't look like the aggressors for most of the night. Which wouldn't be as much of an issue if we were playing a star-studded team, fully healthy, at their best, with a monster record, like, say, the Celtics. But this is a 76ers team that's been struggling a bit. Their best player is Tyrese Maxey, who has had a phenomenal season. I'm a big fan of Tyrese Maxey, but obviously not having Joel Embiid, who is an MVP candidate almost every year that he plays, that's a big loss for them. And this should be a game that we take advantage of, and that was not the case. Instead, the Clippers let Cameron Payne walk into 23 points for a season high. And Tobias Harris, former Clipper great, 24 points, really efficient from the floor, 11 for 19. Tyrese Maxey did his thing as he normally does, 9 for 17 from the floor, 24 points. Guys like Kelly Oubre and Buddy Hield, Paul Reed, all these guys chipped in. And that's not something that can happen, especially with, the standings being so close. I think at this point in the season, we could probably kiss. I don't know if it's statistically impossible, but it's probably very close. If not, we can probably kiss a top 3 seed goodbye, which is unfortunate. I think I'm of the belief that the higher seed is always something that a team should push for in the regular season for a multitude of reasons. But the Clippers still do have a good shot of retaining home court advantage as a 4 seed going to the playoffs, but that's neither here nor there. The point that I'm trying to make is when the standings are so close and you've lost tiebreakers to the Pelicans, to the Timberwolves, to the Thunder and stuff like that, and these are all teams that we've been grappling with for seeding all season, particularly the Pelicans as of late. You have to find ways to win the games that you're supposed to, because our schedule to round out the season isn't particularly easy. It's not impossible, but it's not particularly easy. And this was one of the games that you got to circle on the calendar and say, okay, this is the one that we win. We can afford to kind of, if it comes to it, we can afford to lose to the Nuggets because we handled business against the 76ers and the Lakers and the Bucks without Giannis and the Hawks without Trae Young. Teams in situations like this. But that's not what happened. I stated who had good games for the 76ers, but I mean, on the other side, on the flip side, it was a quiet game from Kawhi, only 20 points. Paul George, 18 points. James Harden, he chipped in with 14 assists, but 12 points only. Norman Powell did what he could off the bench, as he has done pretty much all season long. But, I mean, you're not paying Norman Powell the money that you're paying PG and Kawhi and James Harden. You pay those guys to go out and win you games like this, and that didn't happen. And it wasn't even just offensively. It was, like I said, Cameron Payne's walking into open threes. Tobias Harris is getting left open for mid-range jumpers and threes. And Tyrese Maxey was getting to the hoop at will. And he's a hard guy to contain. But, I mean, we have big wings for a reason. Smaller guards shouldn't be getting to the rim at will against us. And that happens too many times and too frequently this season. And, yeah, they were kind of just getting every shot that they could, and there was a little bit of a run late. But the thing is, these are NBA players, and I say Campaign walked into. You can't let Campaign walk into 23 because he's Campaign. At the end of the day, guys like Campaign and Kelly Oubre and Paul Reed, these are NBA players. They're some of the best players in the world. So if you give them the confidence, I don't care who they're playing against. If you give them the confidence, they are going to feel like they can hit any shot. And that's exactly what happened. And that happens far too often with this Clipper team. And you see it all over Twitter, and you see people talk about it. Clipper fans talk about it all the time is, why did this random guy have a career high against us, or why did this person who normally shoots 20% from three shoot 55% from three tonight? And while some of it really is bad luck and it's just a weird thing that many Clipper fans um, have experienced over the years, but I think that part of it is that we have a tendency to under prepare and take for granted some of the players that we face because we're just kind of expected to win these games. And that's gotten us in trouble not only this year, but been a reoccurring theme in the 2-1-3 era. We come in with like this, I don't want to say overconfidence, but that's kind of what it is. We just expect to be able to waltz into the win. And teams, I guarantee that's on the scouting report at this point for opposing teams. This Clipper team can get ahead of themselves and you can put them away and shell shock them. And it's hard for any team, no matter how good and how many all-stars are on the floor. It's hard for any team to come back when the opposing team has all the confidence in the world. Basketball, and particularly in the NBA, is very much a momentum driven sport. And people can score in bunches. Doesn't matter if they're the 13th man on the roster or the number one guy. Can score in bunches. That's just how it is. So, yeah, this one was tough. I'm not going to dwell too much on it, but with the whole Harden and Daryl Morey narrative, and I really thought that James was going to come out firing in this one. Only took 13 shots, which is, he doesn't typically shoot much more than that because he's more of a facilitator this season. But you kind of expect him to, hunt when guys aren't hitting their shots. And Rolla has talked about this on previous podcasts. When guys aren't hitting their shots on our team, you kind of hope that James Harden, particularly in this situation where there was something to play for him personally, you kind of hope that he attacks the game offensively more aggressively, and you just didn't see that. There was just a lackadaisical nature. Paul George with 5 turnovers. This one was just bad. It was bad. And the shitty thing, too, is that this was the first night of a back-to-back. And the second game on the second night of a back-to-back was against the number one offense in the league, the Indiana Pacers. And the Pacers, particularly Tyrese Halliburton, have been in a little bit of a slump lately. The shooting numbers haven't been what they were when they were cruising. And that always spells trouble for the Clippers, it seems, because whenever guys are having shooting slumps or playing well below their league average or their season average, it's great warm-ups and great games to get into rhythm when teams come and play the Clippers. And that's kind of what happened. Tyrese Halliburton didn't have a monster night or have, a scoring outburst like he has throughout the season, but he was good and he was efficient, and he put up 21 on the Clippers in this one. 31 from Pascal Siakam again. In this one, the defense was just porous, and we weren't providing any resistance. Pascal Siakam was just walking into mid-range jumpers and getting open shots, and he's a champion. He's a fantastic player, and those are like layups for him. So he was cooking. Miles Turner had a great game. Miles Turner, you kind of expect to have a better game against the Clippers just because our starting center is Ivica Zubac, who has a little bit of a harder time shuffling his feet out at the perimeter, and Miles Turner loves to shoot threes. He had 4 of them in this one. But yeah, I mean, 26 apiece for Paul George and Kawhi, which was good, but James Harden only chipped in with 11 points. I feel like the timeliness of the turnovers in this one were bad. I will say this is a game that Russell Westbrook came back from a broken hand, which was just from a standpoint of this Clipper team with how they've been playing, the lack of effort, the lack of care and fight. This was a good thing to see. Russ coming back, he's been such a vocal leader for this team all season long. I really can't speak any higher about Russell Westbrook than I have. And, he really is such an important part to this team. 14 points in 18 minutes was great. 5 for 10 from the field. you could tell in this one that he was still trying to get his cardio, get his conditioning right. Um, so 14 points from him was great to see, but it was more so like he was trying to kind of force himself to get back into rhythm in this one, and that wasn't great. Norman Powell again, 22 points off the bench, 8 for 13. He's been efficient, but we need more from our top end talent. Terrence Mann has been awesome lately, but 6 points from him in this one just wasn't a great game. And I think honestly with this one, which is another reason why that 76ers loss was such a tragedy, was that this is a game that if you win the first night of a back-to-back, when all this when pretty much the whole roster except for Russell Westbrook was playing and healthy, that's the game that you want to win, so that if worse comes to worse and you play this Indiana Pacers team on the second night of a back-to-back, they're the number one they're the number one offense in the league, and so you expect them to kind of give you buckets in bunches, and that's what happened. And that would be a lot more, taking a loss, particularly a close loss to the Pacers team, would be a lot more palatable if we didn't go ahead and lose the game before that. And this game became a must win. And after we took this loss, 133-116, I believe we were momentarily, but at the time, it really did feel like the sky was falling. We got bumped down to the 5th seed. I think after this game, we were tied with the Pelicans as far as win-loss, but as I said before, they had the tiebreaker, and so it momentarily bumped us down to the 5th seed, and rightfully so. A lot of Clipper Nation was kind of in a panic. This is a team that all season long the focus has been win a championship, get a higher seed. Ty Lue said it in the offseason. We're going to take the regular season seriously. We made a trade for James Harden, who is arguably one of the best regular season floor raisers in the league. And now we're out here settling for 4 seed, where might get the 5th seed. At that point, I wasn't even sure if we wouldn't be in the play in or not. It felt that bad. Just from a energy standpoint from this team, you had guys not talking on defense. Everybody's throwing their hands up in the air. There was a very noticeable sense of frustration out on the floor. And as I said before, that's part of the reason why I still have hope for this season, especially after the last couple wins that we've gotten. That's part of the reason why I still have hope, is that really the biggest issue with this Clipper team is them getting in the way of themselves. And what I mean by that is this team, when they're at their worst, is not necessarily when they're missing shots, or when shots don't fall, or when they're playing a team that's better than them. That's not when the Clippers are at their worst. Clippers are at their worst when they just aren't getting up for games. Simple as that. When they show up and they're going through the motions and not even making an effort to go get 50-50 balls or rebounds, or letting other teams get 3 or 4 offensive rebounds before they make an easy layup, or blowing defensive coverages, or little things like that are so easy to remedy if the guys on the floor just focus a little bit or care a little bit more. And that's what's so frustrating on the other end of it, is you would expect the guys to play with a sense of urgency, because they know what's at stake. A lot of people have said, and I agreed to a point, that this is 213's last dance. This is the last real chance that this core of Kawhi Leonard and Paul George have to win a championship. And whether I'm right or I'm wrong about that, that has largely been the narrative. And whether it's right or wrong, this team has had so many chances to really make a run at the championship, and for a multitude of different reasons that hasn't worked out. We finally have a season where Kawhi's played a majority of the regular season, which is awesome. Paul George is healthy. We have James Harden. We have a great bench, when they're playing at their best, with Russ and Norm. Amir's been great largely throughout the season. We acquired Daniel Tice, who's been awesome. Mason Plumlee, he is what he is, but he's even had his moments to where he's a serviceable backup big. I guess I'm not going to get into that, but the pieces are there, and we should be able to really compete night in and night out. And the nights that we lose to these teams that we should be beating are nights where the team just isn't focused and isn't playing like they care, and that's been the most frustrating thing. We will see if this little stretch of 3 games that we've won, which I'll talk about in a second, the way that we've been playing in those games is going to be sustainable. I'm kind of on the boat of I'll believe it when I see it at this point, because we really haven't gotten, aside from that run in December and January, we really haven't gotten a large enough sample size to say, oh, this is a team that is going to give you everything that they have night in and night out, which sucks. But I would love to be wrong, and a good way to start, particularly right before the playoffs start, is building off of this little stretch of wins that we've had. We've had 3 wins in a row. We're playing a Sacramento Kings team tomorrow, hopefully going 4-0 in this little road trip. But the first of these wins was the rematch against the 76ers in Philly. Going into this one, I was quite nervous because I didn't know what to expect. After seeing us lose to the Pacers and the same 76ers team, a couple nights before, who is confident going into that game if you've watched this team, knowing all of that and seeing all of that with your own eyes. I wasn't particularly confident, but I knew that given where we were in the standings and given what was at stake and how many games were left, that this was a game that we needed to win. And this one was kind of a back and forth game for the first half. It looked like, oh no, it's going to be the same, more the same. It was kind of a rock fight all the way through. And then going into about the fourth quarter, you could tell that there was, I don't want to say that a switch was flipped. I don't want to go there yet. But you can tell that the focus was starting to be at the forefront, particularly of Paul George and Kawhi's minds. And basically, long story short, Paul George and Kawhi and James Harden really stepped up in the clutch. And we saw some great, particularly defensive plays from 2-1-3 in this one. There was a play where Paul George is hounding Kelly Oubre after, I think, a rebound, and he manages to poke it out of Kelly Oubre's hands. It was called out on Kelly Oubre. We get the ball back, and I believe Paul George hit a 3, or somebody hit a 3 after that. It was a big momentum play, and those are the plays that are contagious, fighting on defense, scrapping to try and get a steal, try and get a loose ball. And so the tone was starting to be set towards, down the stretch, and it was still a close game. And then Kawhi ends up getting 2 and 1s right at the hoop. The second one, he ended up putting the ball on the deck, caught it out the 3-point line, put the ball on the deck against former Clipper great Nico Batum, who played in this one. Didn't play in the last one, but played in this one. We will always love Nico Batum in Clipper Nation. But Kawhi took it up against Nico and got the and 1, got 2 and 1s for 6 straight points, and kind of put the Clippers back in this. And there were a couple calls, you kind of saw it all over Twitter, that the Clippers were kind of given this game by the refs. I'm not of that belief. I thought the calls were terrible both ways throughout this game. There was a play where Tyrese Maxey drives the hoop in crunch time. Looks like he kind of trips over his own feet or travels or what have you, and they called the foul on Amir Coffey. And then there was a play where Kawhi gets a block on Kelly Oubre in his first attempt to try and win the game at the rim. Kawhi stuffs Kelly Oubre. It gets wedged in between the rim and the backboard. They call it jump ball. Philly gets it back on the jump ball. Kelly Oubre takes it to the rim again, and Paul George jumped and looked pretty vertical, in my opinion. I know that a lot of people will disagree, but Paul George gets the stop. I know that there was a last 2-minute report that came out from the refs that said that Paul George actually did commit a foul in that last play, but they also said that there was a play where Kelly Oubre fouled Paul George on a rebound that because of that, Paul George wasn't able to get a rebound. This was in crunch time as well. So there was bad calls across the board. But bottom line, the Clippers defensively particularly found a way to gut this one out. And the Clippers ended up taking a 108-107 win against the 76ers in Philly. It was hard to be super excited about this one, although just because the Pelicans were so close behind us and we really needed the win just from a standing standpoint, I was really excited to see it. It was hard for me to get too ahead of myself just with how the Clippers had been playing. So, I kind of, for myself, and I speak for a lot of Clipper Nation, I'm sure, we were kind of looking at the next game, which was going to be, in my opinion, the most real test, or the most the hardest opponent in this little stretch of games against the Orlando Magic in the following game. And it was a very similar game in this one. We did have the Clippers did have an 11-point lead at one point, I think in the third, but the Magic, who are a fantastic team, I think they're still fourth in the East, kind of fighting with Indiana, I believe, in the standings. I got to double check and take a look at the standings, but they're a great team. And, they have Paolo Banchero, who's phenomenal. They have Franz Wagner, who's very, very good. Jalen Suggs is having a great year, particularly in terms of shooting. He's always going to bring the defense, but he's shooting lights out behind the arc. They have the pieces to be a really good team, and they've been really good. And I thought that this was going to be a big-time test for the Clippers. And the Clippers played pretty well in this one and managed to get an 11-point lead, but the Clippers were showing signs of kind of taking their feet off the gas, and the Magic were able to kind of storm back. I think that they might have even taken the lead at one point. But down the stretch, similarly to the way that they handled business against the 76ers in the game prior, Kawhi and PG locked in. And they did what needed to be done. Paul George had a horrific shooting night for about 3 quarters, but he hit arguably the biggest shot of the game. Basically, down the stretch, Kawhi hits a crazy turnaround jumper to extend the lead, and Paul George basically went back and did the exact same shot, but to a higher degree of difficulty on Jonathan Isaac, who's a fantastic defender. Hit a tough shot, turnaround J on him right at the free throw line, and put the game away. The Clippers ended up winning this game 100-97. This one was much needed, and it was a great test again. And part of me, so it's a double-edged sword with these two games, because at the same time, I think these are games that I would have liked to see won in 3 quarters and kind of been able to play the bench a little bit, give the stars some rest down the stretch, have more of a commanding lead. But I think on the other side of things, having these 2 games, particularly against a higher level of competition like the Orlando Magic, so close to the end of the regular season, I think that this is a great way for the Clippers to build on late game execution. And they executed. Particularly our 2 best players, Paul George and Kawhi Leonard, they executed and did what needed to be done, and hit big shots. And that's why you pay them the big bucks, is to go out there and win you games with big shot making. And they did that. And while I would have loved to have a blowout win and get some rest, I really do think that the late game execution reps that the Clippers had in these 2 games, hopefully, fingers crossed, Anything can happen, but hopefully the Clippers kind of keep this tape in the back of their heads and rewatch this footage going into the playoffs to show what this team is capable of down the stretch. Against a team that the Orlando Magic, needed the win as well, and they were fighting and playing hard, and they wanted the win as well. But the Clippers found a way to step up and get the win. So this was an awesome win for a lot of reasons, and making it two in a row, I felt a lot better going into this Hornets game. The Hornets are one of the worst teams in the league this season, so I shouldn't have been as worried. After those two losses against the 76ers and the Pacers, I shouldn't have been as worried as I was to face the Hornets. But the two wins before that game really kind of settled me down a little bit. And Clippers didn't necessarily run away with this one because of some absurd shot making from Davis Bertans in the fourth quarter. They went on a little bit of a run, but this game was pretty much in the bag throughout the way. The one guy that I wanted to talk about particularly in this game, and what a game it was for Mr. Paul George. 41 points for PG, 8 for 12 from 3, 14 for 21 from the field. And Kawhi chipped in with 23, Zubats with 24 and 12. Zoo had an awesome game, was really setting the tone and kind of going to work down low. In the first 2.5 quarters, particularly, Zoo had a great game. James Harden, chipped in with 10 assists, only 6 points, but going back to Paul George really came out aggressively and looked aggressive. I think he missed his first 3 shots in this one, but after that, Paul George really set the tone offensively and was attacking the defense. He was getting to the rim, absorbing contact, finishing through contact, stepping back, hitting mid-range jumpers. He was doing it from all over the floor. His 3-point shot, he wasn't pump faking the defender to death. He was just going up with it. And that is when Paul George is at his best, when he can kind of get a couple dribbles in, kind of get a guy off balance and just pull up. And this was in my opinion, and I'm sure a lot of people would agree, this is the best game from Paul George all season. And while it was against the Charlotte Hornets, that, the way that he was attacking the game and the way that he was commanding the ball and really taking over offensively, that's not, it's no joke. It's important. Those are important reps, and 41 from Paul George is nothing to scoff at. 8 threes. This was a masterclass from Paul George, and it was really, really good to see. Again, I always have to temper my expectations with this Clipper team, but I will say that I have to give Paul George his flowers for this one, because he looked aggressive and he looked decisive, and this was a great win. The Clippers need every win that they can get down the stretch. We don't want to lose home court advantage, and we want to maintain that 4th seed. But on the top, before I jump into previews, on the topic of seeding, there's been a little bit of a twist in the potential Clippers playoff matchup. And that has been, the Pelicans have lost a couple games, rightfully so. Brandon Ingram is still out with that knee injury. But the Dallas Mavericks have emerged as, I think they currently sit at 5th. And they've kind of replaced the Pelicans as the potential fifth round, the potential first round matchup, 4-5 matchup for the Clippers. So there's a very good chance that this Clippers team, instead of playing this Pelicans team that they have had trouble with in the regular season, I still would probably prefer the Pelicans in a playoff series against the Mavericks. But there's a very good chance that the Clippers are going to have a third matchup against Luka Doncic and the Mavericks in the last couple of years in the playoffs, in the first round of the playoffs. And I kind of want to wait to talk a little bit more about this next week when I do have Rolla, because I know that he has opinions on this, probably the same ones as me. But arguably the Mavericks have gotten a little bit better offensively. Having Kyrie Irving is a big boost offensively. And while defensively they kind of lack a little bit because of Kyrie's size, and Luka has never been a great defender, particularly with how much energy he exerts on offense. The Dallas Mavericks have arguably gotten better. They replaced. I mean, I guess the last time that we played the Mavericks, they had Dorian Finney-Smith, so they replaced Dorian Finney-Smith with PJ Washington, and they added some front court depth with Daniel Gafford, who's a great finisher, really, efficient finisher around the rim. Derek Lively's been great. Tim Hardaway Jr. can always do we've seen him do against us in the playoffs. So this is going to be an interesting wrinkle. I think personally, particularly if the Clippers continue playing the way that they've been playing. I think that we match up pretty well against the Dallas Mavericks. I think we have the season. I think we have the tiebreaker against them this season. And particularly because of their shortcomings on defense, we match up pretty well against them. Although I did see a statistic that said I think over the course of the last month they've been like a top 3 defense, which is scary to think about. But yeah, it's a little bit of food for thought. We will talk about that more next week when I have Rolla with me. But we're going to take a quick break, and then I will jump right into previews. All right, guys, we are back. I'm just going to jump right into the previews for the next 3 games. I think the 4th game would be against the Cleveland Cavaliers on Sunday, but that is a 12:30 game, so we'll probably record next week's podcast after that, and hopefully after the win for the Clippers. But the next 3 games, the first of which would be tomorrow against the Sacramento Kings. It's the last game in this little 4-game road trip for the Clippers at 7 p.m. Tomorrow, which would be a Tuesday. The Sacramento Kings, they're a great team. And they've done a fantastic job in kind of getting things right. Last year, they made the playoffs for the first time in like 15 or 16 years, longest playoff drought in North American sports history or something like that. But they've been great. And, De'Aaron Fox I think he's become underrated at this point. He's such a great player, such a hard player to stay in front of. Domantas Sabonis is a triple-double machine. He's great. They have the pieces, in Monk and in Herter and in Harrison Barnes. And they have the pieces that really can contribute, around the edges. But 2 of those players that I just named are out for several weeks, if not for the season. I think Kevin Herter is out for the season with some sort of shoulder injury, and Malik Monk is out with, I think, a leg injury for several weeks. So basically, bottom line is the Kings will be without Malik Monk and Kevin Herter, which is a big loss for them. It really is. Malik Monk particularly gives us trouble every time that we play against the Kings. So again, this is, I'm not saying that this is going to be a cakewalk, because the Kings still do have 2 guys named De'Aaron Fox and Domantas Sabonis, and those guys are no joke. But if we run out a healthy team, and I believe the injury report is clean for the Clippers going into this one, this is a game that we should win. And again, it's another good game to practice sharpening our skills against a legitimate team that is going to be a playoff team, likely. And we can't just waltz into this one and hope for a win. I would love to see the same passion and the same fire that we saw down the stretch in the Magic game and the 76ers win. I would love to see that throughout the game, and this one and the next 2, but particularly in this one because of the missing pieces that the Kings have. And that would be a great way to kind of extend the lead early. And I'm going to challenge the Clippers to say that I would hope that we can kind of put this one away in 2.5, 3 quarters and get our stars some rest maybe in the 4th, because the seeding situation is so tight and it's so close that I'm not 100% sure how much leeway we're going to be able to give our stars in terms of resting, the last couple games of the regular season. I mean, these games matter. So I think the way that we can give our stars some rest is to do it in game and handle business early and, you know, give them a fourth quarter off. This would be a very welcome sight, you know, not only for Clipper fans watching that are just looking for some consistency here, but I think for guys like Kawhi who've played a ton of games this season, you know, in comparison to what he normally plays. You know, our stars deserve a little bit of rest, but they have to earn it. So I would love to see that in this one. The next one is on. Sorry, guys. The next one is on Thursday, April 4th against the Denver Nuggets. I think this one's going to be tough, depending on who they roll out. I know that they've had some bumps and bruises coming down the stretch of this season. I feel like every team's kind of limping into the playoffs this season. I don't know what the reason is for that, but it is what it is. But depending on what version of the Denver Nuggets we get, this one's going to be tough. But I think that it's important to play for the Clippers to play their hardest in this one, strictly from a standpoint of if we want to go far in the playoffs, there's a very good chance that we're going to see, especially if we're the fourth seed, very good chance that we're going to see the Denver Nuggets in the second round of the playoffs. And just in terms of showing a potential playoff matchup, potential playoff opponent, that we're not gonna mess around this season and in these playoffs. I would love for the Clippers to kind of give the Denver Nuggets their best shot. I'm not saying that guarantees them a win. The Nuggets are the reigning champions. They present a lot of matchup problems for the Clippers, but I think in this one, I'm just looking for the Clippers to kind of come out aggressive, win, lose, or draw. Come out aggressive and kind of strike a little fear in the Denver Nuggets for a potential possible playoff matchup with the Los Angeles Clippers. That's what I'm looking for in this one. And then the final one that I'm going to cover is the Utah Jazz. In years past, I would say I hope the Clippers dominate the Jazz because Rudy Gobert and Donovan Mitchell and the same guys that we have had a little bit of a pseudo rivalry with over the course of the season, but this is obviously a very different Utah Jazz team. This is a Utah Jazz team that's been struggling for a good amount of the season. They've had a lot of injuries. I'm not even 100% sure if Lauri Markkanen is playing, but they do have guys that can give you problems. Keontae George has been having a really good, particularly second half of this season. You know, Colin Sexton plays his heart out every time he plays us. They have got John Collins. They have guys that can compete, but obviously the talent gap is pretty drastic. I think if the Clippers roll out a healthy roster, the talent gap is pretty drastic, and that's no offense to the Utah Jazz. It's just it is what it is. They're probably going to be in the lottery this offseason, and the Clippers are playing for a championship. So Clippers got to win this one. Again, in-game rest for the Stars starts with the Stars coming out and handling business early. I would love to see Paul George and Kawhi and Russ and Norm and Harden all get some rest down the stretch of this one, but they got to go out there and earn it. So I think that's really going to be my motto for this Clipper team for the rest of the season is you got to go out there and earn it because with the multitude of different versions of this Clipper team that we've seen this season, some have been amazing and some have been really, really bad. So I think that the motto really needs to be if you want to get the win and you want teams to take you seriously and you want the NBA to take you seriously, and if you want to be treated like a contender, you got to go out there and earn it. And I know that this Clipper team can go out there and earn it because they've done it before this season. That stretch of games in December and January really was the most dominant I've ever seen a Clipper team. And I was obviously a fan all throughout Lob City. Lob City was fun. It was electric. They were always on a string offensively, but there was a level of dominance during that stretch that this team this year had where it was more dynamic than Lob City. We were scoring from all three levels. We had the amount of top end star talent we had. We've never seen a Clipper team like that. And I challenge the Clippers to get back to that, because really it's just a matter of wanting to do it. We have the same group of guys, some of which are playing better than they were at that point. I know Terrence is playing better than he was at that point, and that's not to say Terrence was playing bad at the time, but Terrence has really, really stepped up offensively lately. The box score doesn't really show it, but he looks a lot more confident. He's getting his shots off quicker. We have Russ back. Norman Powell is making a strong case now with Malik Monk out. Norman Powell is really making a strong case for sixth man of the year. He's been awesome. Zoo is slowly kind of starting to get back into the form that we saw before he got hurt. So the pieces are still there. The Clippers just got to go out there and do it. So here's to that, guys. I know that you guys are probably all sick of hearing the same thing, but it is true. The Clippers are going to be as good. This Clipper team is going to be as good as they want to be. And let's just hope that they want to be the team that wins it all, because it's certainly possible, and maybe even probable, if we get that version of the Clippers. So, guys, I think that about does it. Like I said, it's going to be a quicker episode this time around. But thank you guys so much for tuning in. Again, you can find us on Spotify. You can find us on Amazon Music, Apple Podcasts, Deezer, YouTube. Get at us on Twitter. Get at us on Instagram. Let us know what you think of the pod. Let us know what you think of the possible first round matchup against the Dallas Mavericks as opposed to the Pelicans. Who would you maybe rather see between the two teams in a 4-5 matchup? I know that it's a very polarizing topic, because both teams have their strengths and both have their weaknesses. But we will see when the time comes. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. Let's go Clips. Let's hope for a good process. And we will talk to you next week. Thanks.